Ladies and gentlemen and ladies, welcome to another week, another episode of the Medicine Ball Podcast. You could have chosen to spend your time anywhere. You rock with me today. Thank you. I never take that lightly. Before we get into it, let my beat drop. Yes, that's right. Welcome to Medicine Ball with your boy LS3 to be exact. And if you ain't in shape, at least your brain should be. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Medicine Ball Podcast, where we focus on giving your brain a six-pack by exercising your mind. Now, exercising your mind means that you actively think about and deal with all situations by first seeking to do anything other than what you are normally programmed and or comfortable in doing. Now, if you're someone who struggles and wants to get better at thinking about things beforehand, as opposed to reacting in ways that require less effort, well, just like anything you want to get better at, it does require training, practice, and work. Now, I'm well aware that thinking about things beforehand as opposed to responding off instinct does require effort. And who doesn't prefer things that are easy? Well, the first step, my friends, can be very easy, and that's to begin to look at all things from an unbiased point of view, which in itself will increase your curiosity in life. Now, exercising your mind won't give you all the answers. You will, however, begin to look at things with more peace, understanding, and patience, while simultaneously equipping yourself with more tools and strategies to help you effectively deal with this thing called life. Now, before we go any further, I'm no doctor, no psychiatrist, no psychologist. I have, however, been diagnosed with bipolar disorder level 1 for 16 years. And to be honest, I got to a point in my life where I was looking at the person I was becoming versus the person I wanted to be. And that, among other things, required me to look at my mental health responsibly. So whether or not you're diagnosed or know someone who's diagnosed or have symptoms or just want to know more about it, it doesn't matter. Maybe you're one of the many people who could just use some tips, tricks, and different ideas to help you get through day-to-day life. Pull up a seat, kick up your feet. This is your family, man. Welcome home, no judgment zone. This week's episode 518, S.C.I.S, episode 518. Let's get right into it. Yeah. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen and ladies, to another week, another episode of the Medicine Ball Podcast. Some real quick announcements. First of all, if you're listening to this, thank you for giving me some of your time. But I just ask that you do one thing. Wherever you're listening, press the back button. And under my profile, there should be an option to subscribe, to friend, to get into the movement. I would like for you all to do that. It costs you nothing. The same thing, if you're already subscribed to the podcast, take a moment wherever you go online, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Medicine Ball LS3, give me a follow. Say something to me on there. I will reply. Thank you very much again for your time and everything you all do. Merchandise is available. And side note, because you may hear Mamba chewing on a bone or a rawhide because I had to, give him a little bribe because I'm back to the video recording. I found some new tools, including one that's online that's allowing me to record simultaneously. So I'm juggling. If my speech sounds a little stuttered, work with me. Y'all watch me grow because I'm looking at myself and making sure I'm looking at the camera on one screen and looking at what I'm using to record on the other screen. So definitely want to be able to continue to provide you all with that. But with that being said, what I was going to say, merchandise, you can see, have on the Medicine Ball sweatshirt right here. It is available on my website, Instagram, Facebook store, all of that good stuff. Guest, King Quill, he is an actor. He has a play out right now, which I shared to my Facebook profile by the name of Why Am I Still Single? I actually went to see it. Great play. So he's been busy with life, kids, play, and giving and serving, which he does all the time as well. So I have the plan to schedule him for the interview next week. However, you ready for this major announcement? I'm going to have another bro talk, a very special bro talk with my actual brother, Nick Scott, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, that's right. So I'm going to have Nick come on to the show. As you guys know, he is a shoe expert. He goes to very respected in the shoe game. He has his own store. He's a reseller of exclusives, and we're doing something very special. I'm going to go ahead and tell you all, and I'll give you more details if you are interested. He is going to be giving away a pair of Panda Dunks, which are some very, very dope shoes because I'm not even a sneakerhead and I'm familiar with them. And he'll be giving away some other good stuff. We'll be talking about our relationship and just growth. So that is something coming up. So that's 2 more interviews I got on deck. And again, If you know anybody that you may have talked to or maybe was venting to you about some problems or some issues they're going to, whether it be depression, worry, anxiety, and maybe on one of my episodes you've heard, if you listened to me or you looked at my post and it helped you, think about that person. And I just ask you guys, please send them a link. Give me a little props, edify me a little bit, and tell them to like, subscribe, follow, share some movement. Join the movement, y'all. All right, let's get right into this thing. Episode 518, S.C.I.S. So as we continue to talk about self-development, and I mentioned on last week's episode one of the books that I'm reading and some ideas about changing paradigms, being truly objective if that is your goal, understanding how to be more empathetic and relate more to people. And I just want to piggyback on that aspect right there. Relationships is speaking with people. And we get into this whole thing, and this is what I'm going to be talking about today, and that is our traits, right? So in society, let me say this. In society, in business, socially, relationships, whatever you're doing, there is a highlight or a light being shown on social traits, if that makes sense. And social traits would probably be synonymous with personality traits. So let me give you an example of some social traits: being charismatic, being the life of the party, knowing how to get on people's good side, being a likable person, being somebody who's agreeable. These are traits, especially in the business world and corporately, when you're trying to move up the ladder or have a certain level or standard of people take you seriously. And, those type of people who are looking at what you say and paying attention to your speech. These traits are very, very important and they're needed. So I want to stop by saying that these social and personality traits are very important and needed. And I'll use myself as an example. I've always been told from a very young age, in the way that people have reacted to me, that I'm a charismatic and a charming person, right? Which are nice traits. They're good traits. They're traits that can be used to advance you in society, but they're social traits. But there is another set of traits that I'm going to talk about today. And these traits are universally accepted. They're universally understood, and they're more important than those social traits. And these are character traits, right? These are character traits. What do I mean by character traits? Integrity, committing, being a person of your word, being humble, treating people with empathy. And these are traits that are desired, I would say, by most people, because if somebody other than yourself sees these traits in you, it says a lot about your righteousness, right? About your development, right? About your personal level of your personal growth and learning. And like with anything, it's all about balance and understanding. And as I'm moving through this paradigm where I'm trying to completely change how I look at everything, right? And we're going to get more into that. I came across this in the book, and so I'm teaching it back in my own way. So this is S.C.I.S. So one thing I will say about these traits that I want to point out is the social traits or the personality traits. The reason why they're highlighted so much, and the reason why I think we as humans lean on those traits, is because a majority of time, those traits are God-given. They're gifted, right? Most people, you either charismatic or you're not. You know what I'm saying? You're either socially awkward or you're able to maneuver around certain areas. You're either a shrewd operator or somebody who could be considered, like, I don't want to say sly, but like, slick. I'll say that. Those are traits that you need to move around, but a lot of the time, those aren't traits that you can practice, right? Think about it. Who practices being like, hey, I want to be more charming and I mean, you can, but it just seems kind of unnatural, right? So a lot of times these social traits are leaned on because they're easily acquired, no work comes, and a lot of people don't have to use any effort at all to, elevate or highlight these traits when it comes to them. Now, those character traits, those are the ones that require work. Those are the ones that require effort. Those are the ones that will do a lot of damage to your ego, right? So, and I don't want to say too much because I want to get into it, but Unless you're thinking a certain type of way. And if you're listening right now to Medicine Ball, then hopefully you're not in the mental peanut gallery and you exercising your brain and you're not being mentally lazy. We're going to go ahead and get into this more, right? All right, so let's see. So a lot of time people have these views that, and when you have morals or when you have values or you have certain characteristics about you and they may not necessarily be preferable, it's not that you're choosing necessarily to be that type of person. Most people wouldn't choose to be standoffish or rude or come off as brash. People wouldn't choose to do that, but it's a science to it. You know, after you do something so long over time, man, the brain is a very beautiful thing, and this is why I always reference, and it keeps me aligned with this mental health thing and me staying spiritual and giving props to God. Bro, think about the brain without you having to do it. The tasks that you do the most, eventually it will itemize those and go into an automatic mode. And a couple of examples of them on a subconscious level are breathing, your hair growing, things of that nature, right? So a lot of people get so stuck on it and it's hard to turn back to begin to open up their mind. And I just want to mention that if you're here on Medicine Ball, we have to be willing to do that. All right. So let's get right into it. I'm gonna hold y'all too long, especially since I'm video recording and I know this sounds awkward. Mamba's a little grumpy. Let's keep it going. So what is S.C.I.S? Well, before I go into that acronym, because these are things that's going to help you to focus on these character traits. And I'm going to try to put it all together by the end of this episode, right? You can build. So let me stop. There are these things called human endowments, right? And I'm going to make you all do a little research. Y'all know who I am, but basically the human endowments have to do with your willingness to survive, but not just survive, your willingness to enjoy life. Now, I just want to build on that for a quick second. When we talk about enjoying life, what do you think about? Living a stress-free life, maybe being able to have more control over your situations, not have to be anxious, not have to worry about the next thing, or when it comes to finances, a lot of times be worried. Your human endowments are the things that you're willing to do outside of just your normal job and the things that the world requires in order to ensure that you're living your best life, so to say, but your happiness, right? And your willingness to do it. So I needed to explain that because a lot of people, and I'll go back to last week's episode's verbiage, right? Proactive versus reactive people. A lot of reactive people aren't tapping into these human endowments, and we're only going to go over 4 of them. All right. So I need you to understand that some of the first steps when it comes to self-development, being the best version of yourself, wanting to learn more and just, be more empathetic and things of that nature is you have to, and we talked about it last week, you have to take control in the areas of your life where you can't. So human endowments, we're going to go into 4, and these are very important. And this is where the acronym S.C.I.S comes from. So I need y'all to lock in. Now, the first thing I need you all to know, as I simultaneously do a couple of things at one time, because I'm going to put show notes in this note about it. First thing I need you to know is with these 4 human endowments, if you don't have the first one, and if you've listened to the show previously, the first one is something we focus on. But when we go into this, when it comes to getting these character traits, which in the end will go back to last week's episode, help you to start focusing on your circle of influence, the things you can control versus your circle of concern, the things you can worry about but can't do anything about, right? So the first one is very important. And if you don't get this first one, it's not going to work. And I like things that built like this because it holds accountability to make sure that you're keeping everything together. So S.C.I.S. The first one is S, self-awareness. I'm not going to go into that too much because we talk about it all the time, but I saw a good definition for people who may not be familiar with it, and I want to give you that definition. So when it comes to self-awareness, it's pretty much the ability of us to look outside of our mind, right? To take a look at how we're actually thinking about things. And it's what separates us from animals. We can actually stop and be like, is that reaction appropriate? What's my thought process? Am I being a negative person? And we can actually analyze that. So that's kind of a mid-level, something I haven't said it on more. And really awareness is being more along emotionally disciplined, how you're reacting and you're aware of it and you're standing, so forth and so on. But I want to give y'all a different way to look at self awareness. That is the ability to step outside of your thought process and look at it. All right. So that's S. C is your conscious, right? As I write down again these show notes because I'm putting the timestamps in. When I say conscience, what I mean is exactly that guilty conscience, right? So I'm not talking conscious like consciousness, being aware of yourself, because that's the first one. When I'm talking about conscious is your morals, your ability to judge what's right and wrong, your ability to commit to that. And that's very important when it comes to character traits, because character traits, a majority of them are things that you're doing when nobody's looking. So if you don't have a good conscience about what's right and wrong and how to go about things in a righteous way, which is why I always speak to having a proper spiritual foundation, but you have to have a conscience, right? Because then what will happen is if you have the self-awareness and these other ones, then you'll end up being a more socially a social characteristic person, or somebody who leans more on your social characteristics as opposed to the good characteristic traits that we want, right? So let's move on to the next letter. I is standing for imagination, and it is exactly what it sounds like. And I always reference Bobby's World when it comes to your ability to imagine, because I just remember he created this whole show, this whole thing, and it was just amazing. And even his kids, that's why his kids were like, yo, I want to be an astronaut. I remember me, I wanted to be a ninja, right? Because our imagination. So that's your ability to see the possibilities. But there's also a second part of that. Your imagination has to also include your ability to see yourself doing the things necessary to get to that further imagination. So slow that down. When it comes to imagination, and this is not just about you being able to see the final product or dream up what the possibilities are. You will also have to incorporate into imagining the discipline required, the things that you have to do, the failures that are going to be included, right? You have to be able to imagine more than just the gold at the end of the tunnel, the sweet spot. And I remember reading a book where it was talking about a majority of people are always in love with the dream. They're in love with the prize, but nobody's ever in love with the work. And the people who are in love with the work are the Kobe Bryants, the Michael Jordans, etc., etc. So you have to have imagination. Number 4 is the S as well. And it starts with self as well. And this one may be right behind self-awareness, but you need the consciousness and the imagination to make sure that you're doing the right thing and visualizing yourself putting in the work, because the final letter, S, self-will. Now, when I was reading about this and kind of like listening to the to it and looking up and researching, self-will is something that most people overlook often and don't tap into enough. And as I continue to research and better myself and read more and understand like human behaviors, I call it all the time the Mamba mentality. What it is that Kobe in you. When I'm coaching people, or even when I was a team leader, and it's just that unwillingness to give up. And let me expound on that a little bit more. And that's going to go straight into my next point before I wrap this up. You have to have a desire to still adhere to your own principles, your own desires, and your ideas, regardless of what people say, but more importantly, your outside circumstances. And this goes back to last week with your ability to respond. Self-will is you pushing through regardless of what the situation may be. Now, mind you, we're not going to go extreme, right? You in danger or something like that. I mean, but even at that, let's use danger. I remember Dave Chappelle's story time. Dave Chappelle was telling this story. It was stand up, and I own it. I can't remember the name of the particular stand up. It was early on. It was like 15 years ago, about the story of Elizabeth Smart, man. I got to keep it real. And long story short, what he was saying is Elizabeth Smart got kidnapped. It was something like, and I'm not laughing at her, and you know what I mean? But she was something like 10, 15 miles from her house. On top of that,
her kidnappers would leave her at the place that's 10 or 15 miles from her house and be like, stay here, don't go nowhere, and go out and do other stuff. Now, eventually, I think she did escape, but the contrast Dave Chappelle was pointing out, and this speaks to self will, was right around that time. And I never looked this up, but I know Dave Chappelle be on it if he's going to say something like that. There was like a 6 or 7 year old black girl who got kidnapped and tied up. And she chewed through her ropes and escaped and got home. And Dave Chappelle was like, and I felt about this like, bro, I'm not tripping. You got kidnapped, you're a younger person, but you gotta take me further than 15 miles from my house, bro. I know these landmarks. Like, man, I know where I'm at. Let go of me. I'm about to go home. And basically, that's an example of self-will, right? One person may have not had as much self-will, which kept them in a situation. It is crazy because the whole world, I don't know, man. I ain't gonna speak like because I don't want to get in trouble. I know I can have a sick sense of humor, but it's just like, bruh, 10, 15 miles from your house, you had to have a willingness to go ahead and do that, regardless of what the people were saying in that situation, and regardless of your circle. No, you just don't be sitting there like, oh, I wonder what I'm gonna do. I'm kidnapped. Oh, get up and run, move. So I want to put these 4 things together and kind of wrap it up. S.C.I.S, episode 518, self-awareness, consciousness, imagination, and self-will. I want to give y'all an example that I could use on myself, but that I deal with all the time because, again, being who I am, and I know God has given me a lot of these gifts, but it's always these little things that happen or I hear over the course of my life when I was younger that stick with me. And one of those things was when it comes to running your own business. The main thing that stuck with me that I kept hearing consistently is, I don't know what the number is now, but like 70% of businesses fail. Now, I want to give you an example of how we can use S.C.I.S, knowing that situation and being a business owner, and how I used it. Most businesses fail multiple times, right? So you have to be self-aware of how you're thinking, and you're probably setting yourself up for failure unless you just got a lot of money and resources and connections backing you. Probably setting yourself up for failure. Now, here's the thing I want you to be aware of. A lot of businesses that fail, that's not the end of the business. They may claim bankruptcy, they may restructure it, they may name it something else, but the failure isn't the necessary end. And furthermore, if you listen to medicine ball exercise in your mind, within that failure, you're going to learn the necessary steps and necessary things to make your next attempt a better effort. With me, my first failure, and I'm only realizing it down the line, the reason that I'm a little bit more into the business because I did the music thing early on and had a whole company with the LLC and partners and whatnot, way before I really had any knowledge of it. This was years ago, right? And even though it didn't work out, now that I've continued to exercise my mind and where I'm at now, in retrospect, I can look on those things and all the things that I've learned and how it helped me. So that's just a self-awareness that most people, and I'm just using this business example to apply this acronym. Conscious. Doing it right will always matter in the long run. Now, I know as far as my people, and I'm talking African American, man, look, I ain't black shaming or nothing, but the facts is the facts, right? Bro, we like to take a lot of shortcuts, right? When it comes to spending money and just going about things, we like to take a lot of shortcuts. And I can remember another situation where I just recalled and learned from it when I was throwing parties in Atlanta, and my official crew that I ran with, we were on top of the business, but every so often we would team with other promoters, right? And they would be trying to cut the smallest amount of money in some of the ways that would affect us the most. And it just didn't make sense to me even back then, like flyers. Like, why would you cut money on a thing that's gonna market the whole situation, right? Security, DJ, like, bro, that's not the type of things that you actually play with when it comes to business and things of that nature. So you gotta use your conscience to do it right. Even when it comes to these billionaires and millionaires hiding all this money, I think the Silicon Valley Bank, they just exposed that, like, they sold the company for millions of dollars right before it went under. Like, that kind of thing going on. So we always have to be aware of that. And of course, my mic starts working better towards the end, but I'm gonna do the editing. But anyway, let's keep it going. The imagination. So imagine what it will be when you're successful. Because it's almost like your imagination is a measure of the potential.
because it's definitely dependent on your ability to put in the work. And people have this thing with work where they just see it as bad, but it's little stuff like even with me with the recording and the podcasting and the marketing and trying to pay for your domain name and email list and things of that nature, bro. There's work involved with that, right? You have to do the work and the research just to make things easier. I'll give y'all an example. I was talking about my resume, and I've been talking to my mom about this a lot. These real, I even learned a new word, aesthetic resumes that these people have with all these little icons next to their email, their contact, and it's different colors. Bro, I put in so much work trying to figure that out that I ended up going into a document and literally spending hours, not with the information, but just aligning the document to make it look, you know what I'm saying, presentable or something that I wanted it to be. Keep working, keep grinding. I go to go do the podcast, and lo and behold, what I use to make my podcast covers lets you build and edit PDFs. Now, if I gave up or something like that, or if I didn't want to do the work, or if I wasn't aware of how I'm doing things, and I told you I'm on this commitment thing where I'm committing to myself and following through, I would be at this 38-year-old age, and I'm pretty sure women, because they're better at that, or just other people are like, duh. There's a lot of people who don't know that, and it just, even that in itself made me be like, yeah, I really got to watch how I'm thinking and, going about things so that I don't make these mistakes. Because even with that, my first reaction was to get upset and frustrated that I had gone through so much when there was an easier way to do it. But then I had to change my thinking, imagine myself doing this work, you know what I'm saying? And understand that, like, I can't get annoyed at that kind of stuff because I did learn something that's valuable in my situation. The last thing when it comes to it, and I'm using a business example. So when it went to imagine, uh, you know, most people imagine their business being successful, all these cars and all this other stuff, but they don't understand. Like, I think Elon Musk said he don't take vacations. He took one vacation one time and a rocket almost blew up. So, I rest my case with that. And the self-will, the Kobe factor, bro. It's no way you can't. It's no way to avoid doing the work. Otherwise, you'll just be average. The bare minimum of just doing that extra work is going to make you better than average, simply for the fact that a majority of people don't want to do it. They're going to talk themselves out of it. But it's scientific. If you commit to it and put in the work and the effort with your business, I give you an example. Most people are like, yeah, I own a business, work 8 hours a day for somebody else, talk all this stuff about their business, and then be like, man, I'm about to chill. I can't do nothing else. And I'm thinking to myself, man, when I'm working my job and I'll be getting off, bro, that's just when I start going to work. You have to have the self-will that no, regardless of you being tired, you think you're the only person tired? You think you're the only person got bills? You think the only person got a flat tire? And I'm not saying in a pessimistic way, but it's just like, bro, you got to refuse to lose. You got to be determined to commit to your happiness, your desires, and your ideas righteously, regardless of what anything anybody says or whatever's going on. And I want to leave y'all with that. So I'm going to give y'all one little quick tip before I get up out of here, because this is part of something I'm going to do. And it's the breathing technique, right? And I'm not going to walk through it, but I'm going to explain to you what I've been doing and how it can help you. The next time you're in a tough situation or somebody who's difficult to deal with says something to you, man, and again, I be really don't want to say this because I know how dramatic and petty people could be. Take you a deep breath. Or even if you don't take a deep breath, I'm gonna give you another one. So there's two things I'm giving you, two homework assignments. One, difficult situation, some traffic, have to be patient, your system loading slow, you're trying to figure out how to podcast a medicine ball. Breathe, take a deep breath in, because what that does is it gives more oxygen to your blood, and you can start sending blood to your brain and your nervous system so you can react appropriately as opposed to impulse. But if you're not willing to breathe, do this. Pay attention to your breathing. Every time you're in an anxious situation or you get annoyed or you have anxiety, as Mamba starts playing around on the ground, we almost done, big guy. You have anxiety or something like that, I want you to pay attention to how your posture is. Are you slunched over? Did your lungs feel compressed or collapsed? Does your face feel scrunched up? Do you feel a tightness in your temple? Now, I need you guys to understand, when you're in that, you're not in the proper body frame, the mentality, you're not breathing, there's chemistry not going on that's going to allow you to make a smart, righteous, rational, character trait building decision. And this really goes back to the S in S.C.I.S. Self-awareness, man. Just be aware of your thought process, or just be aware of your body. When you get in anxious situations or you be frustrated or whatnot, just pay attention to your body. Are you tense? What's your body posture? Where are your hands at? This will start you on the S.C.I.S to get you to these better character traits, which will ultimately enhance your social traits. Because if you're focusing on your social traits, right? And I'm going to leave y'all with this. It's like having a map, and I'm in Georgia, so I'll use this as an example. It's like having a map of Illinois, but you're in Georgia and you're looking at the map and you're trying to move around. Yeah, you know how to read a map. You know what streets look like. You know how to identify stuff, but you don't have the right map. You focusing too much on the map instead of what the map says. But when you focus on these character traits, that will allow you to be dropped in difficult situations and still persevere. So if you're in Georgia and you have a map of Illinois, what the character traits will allow you to do is identify that you have the wrong map and go from there, versus highlighting your ability to move a map, read a map, look at the sites, and pay attention to things that's going to let you know where you are. Don't focus too much. It's all about balance. All right. Yo, please, I'm asking y'all again, because I recorded this episode. If it sounded a little choppy and whatnot, yo, I'm still experimenting. Those of y'all who've been with me since day one, you're growing with me. But I'm looking at the video now. I like the way it's looking. Two things. And it doesn't matter the order, but really, just to be good, every single day you should be looking to lessen the suffering of someone else. Whether it's being nice to to somebody who's difficult, whether it's your mom who's criticizing and all, yeah, you just be like, yes, ma'am. Whether it's that person who you can see you can help with their bags. I saw a guy at the gas station yesterday who was really confused after he got his change back. And I didn't say nothing to him, but he was even confused pumping his gas. I just stayed in my car and waited until he pumped his gas and got in and drove off. And learned something every single day. Even if it's about yourself, your breathing, your resiliency, what makes you quit. I love y'all. Stay up. Please like, subscribe, share, man. Please say something to me on Medicine Ball. When I want these likes, subscriptions, and this interaction, of course, I want to monetize it. But I think it's more important that I'm talking about things that people who are listening want to listen to. Shoot me a message. Holla at me. Reach out. And remember, what most people desire, your dreams, your goals, and all of that, is usually right on the other side of that adversity or whatever's blocking you or frustrating you. Fight through, push through. You got this. Keep your head up. Episode 518, S.C.I.S, self-awareness, consciousness, and your conscious, as in Jiminy Cricket conscious, be your guide. Imagination and self-will. I love y'all. Stay up. Till next week, me and Mamba's out. Yeah.